So, dear ladies and gentlemen, and my non-binary friends, we're very excited to welcome you back to PSIR Talks, a series of our interviews that we hold together with our NU alumni. This week, we have a great guest that graduated NU PSIR department in 2017 with Cum Laude diploma, pursued master's degree at Kuan School of Public Policy, and then proceeded to work as a data specialist for Apple in Southeast Asia. So, welcome, Inkar. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to see that the PSIR department is lively and full of enthusiasm and hosting the talks even during this not easy times. So I'm really glad you guys invited me as a guest lecturer or whoever I am tonight. So yeah, I hope my experiences and my insights from what I've been through so far will be helpful for everyone in this. And if people are if you can turn on your cameras, I think that would be really nice. I mean, no pressure, of course, but talking to people is nicer than talking to the screen. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. We're very honored to host this interview. So, the way our event is going to go, we have our main segment where we ask you like general questions, and then if the audience wants to ask you specific questions, we're going to have a Q&A session in the end.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us briefly about what are you doing right now and where you are at the moment?
So at the moment, I'm on vacation in Barcelona with my partner, but I quit my job in Singapore in March, and I'll be joining McKinsey in Budapest in 1 month. So end of May, I'll be based in McKinsey in Budapest.
Wow, that's nice. Some new refreshments in your life, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Congratulations then with the new stage of your life.
thank you.
So, I think we can dive into our questions right now. Let's start from the beginning with your undergrad experience. How
Okay.
and why did you decide to major in political science?
So actually, when I applied to NU, because we have also the United National Exam, YENTE, I was preparing for physics, and I was actually a math and physics kid when I was in high school. So I was doing math Olympiads, physics projects, and physics was something I studied for YENTE. And I also did the physics exam when I was entering NU. However, at that time, I was only the third batch, and no one knew what critical thinking is and what is this exam. We didn't have the study centers, the preparation material, anything. So I was really scared that I will not be able to pass the critical thinking, but it was very interesting to me. However, in my batch, there were very few people who were able to pass critical thinking. Therefore, for those people who scored high in math, they actually said that we could actually take an option and like pass the critical thinking exam. And if we pass it, we can transit to Econ IR Foundation. If we don't, we can stay in the engineering part. So I took the chance and I passed the critical thinking with the same score I got in physics, which was like 25 out of 30. And I was really surprised that I have critical thinking. So, actually after that, I transitioned to the Econ IR Foundation. And from there, I started thinking about the PSIR measure. So I think the interesting part for me, why I chose this measure was that most of my life I spent like in high school, right? I was doing something I'm good at, like physics and math. But IR was something I was really interested in. I would read a lot of political news. I would have conversations in the kitchen with my parents, and I will have arguments with my brother who had very different views from me. So it was really interesting from the beginning. But then when I started the major in NU, the foundation year was really interesting. But I think the undergrad with SHSS was really meaningful. And when I just took first 2 or 3 introductory courses, I already knew that this is the major I want to have, because it gives me the knowledge about the world, the understanding of what's going on, the circumstances, how things work, and in general, I think it helps to develop your personality as well. Because the professors are great, the people you interact with, the class conversations, just listening to my classmates was very interesting. So along with that, I also attended debate club. I'm sure you know about that. And it also affected for me to stay in that major and not change it throughout my journey with HHSS, because debating was also a meaningful journey which helped me to raise a lot of political questions in my mind. And I thought this is something I would really study. So that's why.
Yeah, thank you. I think it all for many of us it actually starts with like kitchen conversations and arguments with your parents, and then it just grows up into something big. As you mentioned, what kind of student clubs did you belong to? How did that experience help you further in life? And did you like discover any new skills for you that helped you to develop?
Yeah. So most of my time, like 90% of my extracurricular time, I spent for the debate club. But I was also part of the SHSS Student Council, where I took part in funding allocation for the students and voting, and then discussing with professors what are the important things that should be done for the students. I was also part of the Students' Rights Committee in my last year. It was just, I think, established by Yasawi Mahsoud, who is also another great alumni from PSIR department. And I was part of that. But as I mentioned, I was mostly into debating because firstly, I went there because of my competitive nature, I think. And I really wanted, sorry, it's my I really wanted to be part of something which will give me this thrill of competition. But later, I think I developed a sense of community there, and I developed really a lot of skills such as organizational skill, leadership skills, building communication with different people, fundraising with different organizations, because we had organized huge academies, tournaments, we sent people abroad. Working with the university administration was also a good experience, because we would have to report to the university, establishing the system of the entire debate club, because we really wanted it to be democratic as we study in our courses, and to be accountable to every decision that the leadership team of the debate club makes. So all those things were part of my student life. And of course, I had a lot of friends whom I'm still in touch with. I think they're friends for life. Like, we've been witnesses at each other's weddings, and like, godmothers to each other's dogs. So I think that's the fun part also of it. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think the debate club is like one of the biggest clubs at the university to this day, and it's like very intense. Like I'm not gonna lie, I know that from the firsthand experience that debate club just consumes most of your time and energy. And I was just interested, how were you able to manage such an active student life and also like retaining a good GPA and keeping up with your studies? Do you have like any like time management tips?
So for me was, of course, to sort out priorities. Like, really need to know what is your priority for the next week, for example. So with the debate club, it will usually consume all my weekends, and we would joke in my debate circuit of friends that we are actually doing double degree, because it's like getting a second education, because you can't be successful in debates as in any other area if you don't work hard. So you really need to read the news, practice the rounds, practice your speeches, do something extra to go. You have to go extra mile to get like all the awards and to win the competitions, to go abroad, to be able to be competitive internationally. So for me, that was also a priority, because I participated in the World Debating Championship, where with my partner Madina Kabaliwa, who's another PSIR alumni, and I think she's one of the best ones in the history of SHS. We went to the semifinals for the first time in Central Asia's history. So we were the first team. So for us, and she also tried to maintain high GPA, and she made it even better than me, I think. And we both really prioritized both our studies and debates, and time management was key of it. So for me, it was usually that I would know that this week I really need to focus on certain assignments. So I would not think too much long term, but I will also, like, if I have time, I will work on my long term assignments, of course. But usually I would have my priorities for the week. So if this week I have very important tournament, I would spend more time for debates and less time for studies. But I almost never skipped any readings, or like I never submitted assignments late, which was, I think, my like motto. Like, I have to do everything on time for my studies. If I start hurting my studies, I would try to give up on debates. And debates is something I really liked, and I didn't want to give up, so I was really motivated. And for that, I always try to sort my priorities. That's one. Two is that these two activities, they were mutually reinforcing each other. So I think for PSIR measures, it was really helpful to read about the news, for example, and I'll be also active in class, raising questions. In debates, we also develop different skills, such as thinking critically about the topics you disagree with, right? And in classes, that also helps, because when you ask questions in your participation, for example, you ask quality questions because you have those skills developed through also extracurricular activities. And moreover, I was usually aware of what is going on in the world, and that also helped my choice of topics for my essays. For example, I already, like, when the curriculum comes for the course, and there are like long essays or something, it would be really easy for me to choose the topic, because I was interested in many things that were going on. So I think the reinforcement of extracurricular activity and studies together was also helpful in terms of time management.
Yeah, I think it's actually very nice when your occupation, like when your major and your hobby goes hand in hand together. So it kind of becomes much more easier to keep balance between those two. So moving on to later years of your undergrad life, to third, fourth year, because political science is so broad, like literally alumni, they from political science, they end up in drastically different places. How did you figure out what your specific interests in political science are?
So one of my favorite professors in PSIR department was Mita Chacha. So Dr. Chacha is no longer with NU, unfortunately, but I took like 7 courses with him out of 8 semesters. So he was also one of the most challenging ones. So he's very strict, and he has no tolerance for any kind of late assignments or non-preparation for the class. So I think that was really helpful, because later in the third year, he was also appointed as my advisor. So he influenced a lot on my choices, and I would like get his opinion on many things that I did after the school. So in my fourth year, I actually interned with the United Nations Development Program in Astana. So I just volunteered, and I had a person, like, I won a UNDP competition through which I got to know a manager there who connected me with another person, and I just showed up and I said, I'll just come every day, please give me internship. So they didn't have any like internship programs open, but they just assigned me as like assistant to a manager, and I was working on gender equality project back then. It was really interesting because UNDP works very closely with the government, and it was interesting to see how a lot of policies, the progressive policies in gender, are being enacted through this IGO cooperation with the government. So that's the time when I actually thought about majoring in the policy for my grad school, but I was still thinking. And I didn't want to go immediately for the master's. I really wanted to get in some work experience first and then apply for the grad school. However, in December, when I was still at university and interning with the UNDP, there was a lecturer who came from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. She's now the vice dean, Dr. Suzaina Kadir. She came to GSPP to give a lecture on gender inequality in Southeast Asia. And of course, it was interesting to me because I was doing that internship. So I attended that lecture and I asked questions. And after the lecture, she and I had a really intense conversation. And she asked me what I'm going to do after my undergrad. And I said that I'll be most likely working. And she said that the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy is open for its applications and I should apply. So I checked out the requirements, but it was 2 years of work experience. And then I asked her, like, how is that, like, important and so on. And she said they give limited number of places to fresh graduates who has done some internships and who has some practical experience. So I should still apply. And that was, of course, it was actually one of two places only I applied for grad school. Another program was in Europe. And I only applied to these two places and I got in both. And eventually I chose LQI because the program was better, the scholarship was much generous. And I think the entire program design was fit in my personality better. So it's very practical. We had professors who would be retired practitioners from the policy sector in Singapore. They will be like literally people who used to work with Lee Kuan Yew. I had a professor who actually wrote a law on like banning chewing gums in Singapore. So that was fun. So that's, I think, why I chose the public policy major. And in the public policy itself, I decided to specialize in economics and development because previously I took a lot of courses on development and international organizations with Professor Chacha. And that was actually the area of my interest. So that's why I specialized in that.
So once you've heard about like Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, did you consider applying to like Western institutions that also specialize in public policy?
Not really, because I thought that, at that time, I thought that I would probably be back in Kazakhstan, right? So in the framework that I was thinking and the experience that I already had at the UNDP told me that things that I will learn in Singapore most likely going to be more applicable in Kazakhstan than things I would learn in Western Europe or the US. So I went for summer semester at the University of Wisconsin Medicine, also sponsored by NU. But after like spending 2 months in the US and learning there in the courses, maybe it's the courses, maybe it's just my opinion, but I don't think we'll be able to close that gap which lies between, for example, in gender policy or in housing policy or water policy. I don't think those are the things that are relatable even in Kazakhstan that you can learn from these countries. So, and in general, because I was studying about Singapore before I applied to this place, I knew that Kazakhstan has been trying to copy a lot from the experience of Singapore, even if besides there are differences in like location, access to sea, and all those things. The Samruk Kazana, for example, it was established and modeled after Temasek fund in Singapore, and the entire, for example, IP system in international Astana International Financial Center is being designed with the help of the Singapore IP office. So there are a lot of things, and even the NU GSPP, which was designed after LQI school, I think, and these are things that are working quite efficiently in our country. So that's why I chose this place, because I thought the experiences will be more relatable and more applicable back in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, I think you make a very interesting and crucial point because from my own experience, I find a lot of senior and junior students being like West oriented simply because the scholars, the literature that they read is more like Western oriented. So yeah, it's something interesting to consider for prospective applicants. And so, as you mentioned about your application process, what did application process look like and felt like for you? Are there any tips for prospective students that are applying to Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the application process has changed now. So just heads up, you have to check on the website. But when I applied, the process was, I think, a bit different from now. So I applied for a Master's in Public Policy program, which is for young professionals who have, on average, 2 years of experience. So I was one of the youngest people in my batch. And I would definitely recommend to apply if you have work experience, because I think it's a place to study when you have really lots of practical experience. So the application process was, first I had to apply writing 2 essays, and then there was no fee. and I didn't have to take any language tests because NU is a partner and we don't need to prove that we study in English. So I didn't have to take GRE, GMAT, nothing. So that was also quite attractive factor because I was a student. I'm financially independent from my parents since I was like 18, but I didn't want to spend money on GRE just because everyone else is taking it. And it's a requirement for almost every other Western school, and especially in the US. So I didn't want to waste my money and time, of course. And it was a priority for me to apply to the place which actually matches my requirements. So it's first tip is like, when you choose the program, is like, it's not just the program choosing you, you also have to understand that you are choosing this university and program. So that's why you have to make sure that the place fits you, because it's not just about, getting the name on your diploma and just living abroad for 2 years. It's 2 years of your life experience. It's also your personal expenses, your time and effort, and your mental well-being. So it's very important. Second, I would say start early. Like, I started quite early and I had the chance to rewrite my essays twice, especially. So one essay was for personal aspirations. So it's like statement of purpose. And then the other one was policy specific. So it required me to write about one of the most pressing policy issues in the world and then find a solution to it and then criticize the solution and then defend it again. So it's like a usual essay. But it had word limits, so I had to be very brief, and you have no space for BS. So it's something that I rewrote twice, and I changed my ideas back and forth, and I had a chance to show it to my professors and get it reviewed in the writing center. So that takes time, because usually it takes time just to get an appointment in the writing center and just to get feedback from your professors. So it's very important to have that time. So start early, like 2-3 months before. You have to have already the package ready and just keep rewriting it, reworking it, reviewing it with people whose opinions you value. So, and also it should not be like you rewrite it with 100 people, right? It should be like limited number of people and limited number of rewritings and reviews, but like quite valuable ones. And so be smart in it. And then the third advice would be so I had that the essays I submitted, the screening process went through, and then I had a policy case, and it was an interview. So my interviewer was associate professor from LQISP, and they send you a case 30 minutes before the interview starts, and then you have time to review it and then to discuss it, and they ask you questions, and then you answer those questions accordingly. And then the entire interview itself is another 45 minutes, and then at the end you have time to ask questions. So before the application, study a lot about the school and try to find resources about the life there and get the insights, because when you really show the interest in the place, you really should be interested. So what I did is I searched for Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts of the people. Back then LinkedIn was not that active, and I tried to write to alumni from the region, and I got connected to a few alumni from Kazakhstan, and I asked them questions about the school. And then everything that I got from them, I used in my other essay, which was Statement of Purpose, where I wrote that learning from these alumni, this is what the school gives, and I believe that this is I really want, because these are my aspirations, and this is what I'm going to do with the knowledge I gained there. So it has to be really a chain, that you have this information, you believe that it's fit for you, and then you believe that you are fit for them, and this is the outcome that will be produced. So you have to be very practical in that as well, and help to understand the school that they are not also wasting their spot for you, and they're also not wasting their money for you if you're applying for scholarship, so that you are an interesting investment, So I think that's the other tip. And then in the interview process, it was really actually nice interview. And usually I would say that most of the interviewers are cooperative. So don't be scared of them. They are not there to fail you. They're actually there to help you. So if you don't understand something and if you are very nervous, you can actually openly say like, sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean? Because I remember I had a case about Fukushima, and I'd read about Fukushima before, like in other courses or something, but I didn't have that much of the knowledge of the context. So there were few things I didn't know, and I openly told him, I don't know, like, could you give me brief context about this and that? So being open, being sincere, being yourself, and asking for help is okay, even during interviews. And actually, when you do that, you also show that you're cooperative, you're open-minded, and you're ready for the challenge, and you're not scared of being yourself. So I think that is also another tip to consider in your interview process. And yeah, so after interview, a few, like, I think a month after that, I got an offer letter. Another week after that, I got a scholarship letter. So yeah, just try to be the best version of yourself, and yeah, make sure that the place that you're going to matches your expectations.
Yeah, it's actually the policy case aspect of your application sounds quite stressful. Like, I don't necessarily understand it fully, but from what you said, it's pretty, I think, time intense. Um, so one more follow-up question that I have. You have mentioned that you first received a letter of acceptance to the university, and only a month later, a scholarship letter. So
No, a week. That was the difference.
a week, right? Yeah, sorry. So did you apply it, like, were these two different processes, or did you apply and you've mentioned that you wanted to get the scholarship?
So back then it was like this: you complete your application, and then at the end you tick the place where you want to be considered for scholarship or not, because the school has its own funds as well. So if you want to be considered for the scholarship, you have to submit another essay where you explain why you deserve the scholarship. So it was for me almost 1.5 pages long, but basically I highlighted how to say, two factors. One, like, why do I deserve from meritocratic perspective, and then the other is why do I deserve from the social perspective. So meritocratic perspective, I think I explained in like 4 points or something. So this is also important to be very structured in your essays, like 1, 2, 3. I want to say these things and that. So that's something you also later learn in OQI. We always express things in 3 points. Like in meritocratic perspective, I explained why I'm a good candidate, and then even if I don't have work experience, how my internships and my extracurricular activities make difference in terms of making me a suitable professional for this program. And then I explained why I'm going to be a good investment for them, because things that I could do after the program are also like realistic. So I was, for example, explaining them how I got fundraised certain sum of money for the debate club and organized huge debate academy, which shows that I'm capable of doing, for example, other NGO projects if I get a job in NGO, or IGO projects or something like that. So I also showed how I can work with different institutions, the government body, Flex, UNDP, and other places where we raised money from, and show them that I could collaborate with different types of institutions, even if they're private or public, and that could actually be like a key characteristic that every professional has to have after graduation. So it's like different reasons for them to invest in you. And then that was the second, I think. Third was that like why I stand out as a graduate from Kazakhstan, and considering that NU is one of the most meritocratic places in Kazakhstan. However, there are still barriers to get NU for people from poor socioeconomic backgrounds, because learning English is not something that every kid in Kazakhstan gets a chance, right? And the level at which you have to have to get in NU is also important. Therefore, parents who have more money for their children to take 5 times IELTS tests, go to the English courses, and these parents and these families usually have better chance. So I told them actually the story of how I learned English, that I went to this boarding school where they gave us a lot of English classes, that I didn't spend a single penny, and my mother didn't spend a single penny from her pocket to give me extra English classes. So I had to always do extra to be there where I was. So and it's like getting to, like, let's call it to the top, right? NU is the top. So getting to the top in non-meritocratic system, it's much harder than meritocratic system. And I managed that task. And in the meritocratic system of NU, I still show my value to that system by maintaining high GPA, participating a lot in the social life, contributing to the student community, and so on. So showing that you stand out as a candidate is very important. And that was, I think, the third one. And then the fourth one, I actually looked up to my essays yesterday to tell you more about the process. And then the fourth one, I just tried to explain in general about my ambitions for the world, that I've been the person who does not, who cannot stand injustice or certain types of discrimination in my society. And wherever I belong to, whatever community I'm part of, I usually contribute a lot to that community by doing some things or the other things. And I try to take leadership roles. If I can't do that, I usually follow, and I coach, or I mentor, and so on. So I told them that I will be someone who, even if after graduation, who will be still contributing to the LQI community by helping the other alumni, students, and everything. So I think that was important also to show that, again, you're a valuable investment. And on the socioeconomic part, I told them the stories how I started working when I was 13, how I became financially independent when I was 18, that I grew up in one-parent family, that like these are the backgrounds that I come from. And I think that scholarship is the only chance for me to get this kind of quality education, because there are no scholarship options that are other scholarship options I could apply for. Polashak does not cover it, for example. That like as a candidate, I match their values, and like those values are something that I've been practicing throughout my life, and I will be practicing after the graduation. So I think that also played its important role.
I think that's an incredible structure of an essay. I think you must have covered all of your life in that essay, right? How, like, you must have worked long on that essay, right? Do you remember how much time you spent on that?
Almost a month, most likely, yeah. But I didn't spend like 40 hours a week on an essay. It's like I would put on the ideas. So for me, usually I think it's for every SHCS essay, the hardest part is to start. So I just took the strategy of like just blowing all the ideas that I have, and to just sit and type it everything in. But then I kept like brushing it, adding something, taking out something throughout the month, and then I submitted it.
Mm-hmm. I also think that it's incredibly smart to cover like your every 4 points from both sides, like meritocratic and also socio like cultural background, because I believe that some students overly focus on one thing but don't really cover or get to the second thing. So you have applied to Rikonu Public School, you got accepted, and then when you went there, can you please tell us about your experience of studying at the National University of Singapore? Like, in what ways it's different from NU? What did you like? What you did not like? Maybe things like that.
Yeah, so I would just start with the fact that it's an incredible place to be. And LQI is separate, like the campus is separate from the entire NUS. That's one thing which is good and bad. So it's bad because you're isolated from the entire campus, and the only other school which is on the same campus is law school. So you don't get to socialize with many other people from like other faculties. But the good side is that we were living in the same area, like in the same dormitory area and university. So we were in our own bubble. It was not the first time for me in a bubble because I was in a new bubble before, but I really liked it because I think through that we could really build like strong connections within our batch. And sometimes it's too much because you live with the same people, you take the same classes and everything. But at the end, like when we were graduating, half of us were crying and we didn't want to leave and everything, even though we were like 25, 20, 30 years old people. So it's an incredible place to be. I would just say 3 good things and maybe 3 bad things if I come up with them. So I think firstly, it's very international. So LQI like tries to pick students from a lot of different places. And when I was there, we were a batch of 67 people from 38 countries or something like that. So it's like you are sitting in the class and you have classmates from Myanmar, Norway, Australia, Switzerland, US, Mongolia, and China, India, and all other places. And also they just don't come from like, one place in that country. They would come from different places. So for example, I had 10 classmates from India, but it was like from all the different states and parts and from different sectors. And I had classmates who were engineers. I had classmates who were lawyers, who were part of the NGO. I had classmates who worked for the New York Times, and classmates who were parts of small startups and groundwork in some places in Africa and so on. So it is very diverse. It just blows your mind when you're sitting in the same classroom that you think sometimes you are sitting in the UN because they represent very different regions. And when they speak, you can understand that their backgrounds is even like more interesting. So getting to know your own classmates was really cool. So it's a very diverse place to be. That's one. 2, it gives you a lot of like practical experience, and even the assignments that we do are very down to earth. It's not something you would just talk abstractly about, which is like important to the world, but it is something you can actually learn things that are important to be able to know and like to be able to practice policy. So for example, we had projects which were client-based. So that was our capstone project. So you actually have a client, a company which gives you the assignment, and you are a team of, let's say, consultants who are working on that assignment. So our client was Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, and we had to do like regression analysis on the connection between investment and economic growth for the APEC economies for a certain period of time. And we were like designing the entire research ourselves, discussing and everything. So it was really cool opportunity to work with the client because you get to know the demands of the company. They tell you what they want to see in the report, but they also give you some space for creativity, so things that you also want to add. So it's a right balance between practice and independence that you want to learn. And there are also like courses like Policy Innovation Lab, which actually also helps you to like, I mean, I didn't take that course, but some of my classmates did and really liked them. And then they went for like different also projects with different companies that were pre-chosen by the professor, or like they also got networking sessions and everything. And back then, before COVID times, we could have networking sessions. So that was really cool. And the school would also organize the networking sessions every 3-4 months. We got industry nights where you just sign up, you come, you get food and drinks, and then you network with people from different companies who are actually interested in hiring the graduates of the school. So those opportunities. And finally, like in terms of practical, the courses that they're usually taught by people who had practical experience in the government, IGOs, NGOs, or consulting sector or anywhere. And they will give you like first-hand experiences and cases. Cases were really important. Like for almost every class, we had to read cases and to solve the policy cases. And it was really cool to be part of that as well. And of course, you will learn from the professors, from your peers, and from the groups that you're working with. And it was an incredible experience. That's the second part. And third part, I think the general exit options from the program. So because when you start a program, you don't only think about these 2 years, you think about what you can do after that, right? And there are a lot of exit options with policy major. So just to give you an example, like some of my friends are like doctors who are helping the protesters in Myanmar. Some of my like classmates are doing consulting in Big 4 or Big 3, whatever. And some of my friends are working for the Singaporean government and doing really like they're in the Prime Minister Lee's office doing all this COVID policies and helping the country to survive it, the crisis. And like it's really cool because the exit opportunities are also a lot because you will gain really transferable skills for each and every industry that you want to be part of after the policy program. So, and studying public policy doesn't mean you would necessarily have to work in public sector or IGO. Like there are plenty of opportunities in private sector for the graduates.
It actually sounds really awesome. Like it covers so much sides of the different field. Like it's really practice oriented, I noticed, right? Because you actually like try to come up with like policy cases with like reports and policies and stuff that you don't.
I forgot to mention something. Sorry to disturb you.
Yeah,
There were also study trips that we were part of. So the program itself has a mandatory study trip that everyone attends. So we, for example, went to state of Penang in Malaysia, where we studied urban policy of the place, and we met government officials. The batch before me, they went to Vietnam, and usually it's one of those Southeast Asian countries that the school chooses for the year and the topic that matches the place. And besides that, we ourselves, our batch, organized a study trip to Japan. And that was really incredible. That was competitive. They only got to choose like 20 people because the funding was limited from one of the Japanese government agencies, and we had to make some co-payment, which is fine, but the learning experience was great. So we went there for 7 days. I applied and I got through, and we met different ministries, like people from different ministries, also Japanese alumni who worked there. We met with startups, with robotics companies, with startups which filter water, like manage wastewater and so on. So it was really incredible in that also. So the study trips is also part of the like practical learning experience. And I think it's important when you are in places such as Singapore so that your thinking of the policy doesn't get limited to that place only.
Yeah, that actually sounds incredible. And I think you just inspired many of people here to apply because of such description of your experience at as SNU. So I'd just like to ask a question a little bit about a different topic. So during your undergraduate years, we also know that you have completed several internships, as you have mentioned. And you have mentioned like that UNDP has influenced your potential like choice of future career. Could you tell us please about all the internships that you had, like and about different experiences at those internships? Like were all of them useful?
So I had 2 internships, and one thing that I would do if I went back, I would do like more, as much as I could. But back then I didn't know it was that important. So I did one internship after my first year. After my second year, I took summer courses. After my third year, I went to Wisconsin. And in my fourth year, I did UNDP. But I don't know if that would be manageable with the workload and debate club that I had. But I would like to do more internships in different companies if that was possible, even if it was like for free, because in Kazakhstan, you usually don't get paid for internships. So first was in Parliament of Kazakhstan, and I got through to that internship because I was part of the Youth Parliament in NU, and it was offered to most of the active members, and we were also going through the application process. That was like my first exposure to the job market in Kazakhstan, and I was like assisting one of the deputies of the one of the assistants of the deputies. So I was in the legal department, and it was mostly just studying the laws and like reviewing them and like pointing out something which wasn't that like which wasn't right, or which was something to be reconsidered or reviewed and so on. It was only 2 months. It was very short, and but it was my first exposure. I wouldn't say I learned much. I think it was just like discipline me to get up and like be there before 9, leave at 6, and have that routine work life and like understand what that means, right? but that was only after my first year, when I was like very fresh in terms of ideas, and I didn't know what I'm going to do after, and so on. And the fourth year, the internship that I chose with the UNDP was more conscious one, like when I really like was interested in the things that they do, and being part of that actually. So I think that was important, because I would say that usually people like know the internships, about the internships that they want to do in the third, fourth year. So yeah, I think that if you're hesitating between different sectors that you want to go to after graduation, or between different schools, you should just try to get internships in that areas. It will help both your application process if you want to go to grad school or job after, and it will also help you to understand what you actually want, or you may also understand what you don't want to do. Like after my first year of internship, I was like, yeah, I don't want to work in the parliament. So but after the UNDP, I was like, development sector is something maybe that I would consider to get employed in after my graduation.
Yeah, it's actually nice that you highlight that it's important not only to figure out what you like, but also what you don't like,
Yeah.
so that you don't spend any more time thinking that like, oh, maybe potentially I could have gone there, and etc. So let's go back to where we stopped before this question. You finished your graduate school. You were done with your studies. What was next? How did you land on your first job after graduating?
It's actually another funny story, because so when I graduated from the LQI, I got the before, like between the graduation ceremony and after the classes, I did another internship in Singapore with the company. It's called Asian Trade Center. And I like on my fourth week of my internship, I got a full-time offer from them. And in Singapore, it's very like the process of getting employed is very hard, because the company which offers you the job has to apply for your visa, and then you have to match certain salary barriers, and then they have to prove that there is no other person in that country that they could hire from the locals, and they have to hire you. So I got the offer, and I actually relaxed, because before then I was actively applying for jobs, and I really want to live and work in Singapore, because I think that was an incredible experience in itself, just to stay in that country and be part of the life there. And after I got the offer, I really relaxed. I finished my internship, and then I had my graduation ceremony. I traveled and I went home, and so on. So I was waiting for my employment pass to go through, and I was really confident that it will go through, which was a mistake because it didn't go through. And it got rejected, and I couldn't like I had to fly back to appeal it. So I flew back, and when I looked into reasons why it was rejected, I was really worried that it was about me. It was about the company. So unfortunately, the company was going through a legal case that I didn't know about, and they couldn't hire any foreigners until that legal case is sorted. So that was the process, and they couldn't do anything about it, because they also didn't know that they couldn't hire people if they're in that legal process. And the legal process was due to like assault that happened between the client and one of the directors. So one of the directors made a joke or something about religion and gender, which was then reported to the ethical committee, and then the ethical committee started an investigation, because it's a director, it's considered a corporate culture or what is going on in that company. And of course, in the company which is accused of racism, you can't hire foreigners. So until the case is sorted. So I was left without any options, and I was relaxed, and I stopped applying, right? And it was really like bad timing for me. So I tried to get my everything together and like started applying again. So I was applying mostly for tech companies, because they were hiring at that time. So I stopped like thinking about the companies which already finished hiring. So I made the list, and then I started applying actively, and then I got an interview for the Apple. position. So it was an outsourced position. I got actually hired with the organization which is called Manpower Staffing Services. So it's like a big HR company which hires you for a certain project for like big tech companies. So usually companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, they now outsource these roles and they hire contract based. So it was really helpful that company was hiring because their process of getting employment pass, because they act as a huge HR, they already know the nitty gritties and they will process my visa very fast. So I got the interview call and then I went for interview. And during the interview, you also have to sign like non-disclosure agreements. And then when you get a job, you have to sign 5 or 6 of them again. But yeah, and after the interview, I got a call and then I had to negotiate my salary. And then after that, in 2 weeks, my employment pass was ready and I started my job in December. So between September and like December, 2-3 months, I was in process of like applying and going for interviews again. And that's how I landed it. Yeah.
But did you have any like prior interest in IT before applying?
I had interest in market research, which was my role, and tech policy. So in general, like how tech companies operate in terms of their policies and how much they affect public policy in general. So my role was actually market research for the tech policy. So that was quite important, and it was good to have the experience from the policy classes, especially on like transportation, because my project was with the Apple Maps team. So they do for like market research for their public transit and transport systems. So it was a good experience, but it wasn't something I really wanted to do any further. So after like almost completing my 1 year, actually no, even earlier than that, in July 2020, I got a call from my managers that they want to renew my contract further for 2 years. At the first I agreed, but I already knew that I don't want to do this for another 2 years. And because of COVID, Singapore got too small for me. And like I couldn't leave the country, I couldn't see my family without risking my visa. So they imposed a policy that when you leave the country, you have to get the approval from your company. When you have come back, you have to apply for re-entry. And some of my colleagues were rejected from that re-entry, and then they lost their jobs after like going abroad. They were not able to come back. So that was like very stressful and holding us off, and like we couldn't travel at all from to the outside world, even like after vaccinations started. And still, people from Singapore cannot do that. Very few can travel if their companies allow them. And my company rejected my travel request 3 times. And after that, I was like, yeah, I don't want to get stuck here. And I started applying again. And I went through 2 tests, 3 interviews with McKinsey. And I recently got an offer, which was like early March.
Well, congratulations again on your acceptance and moving to Europe. Just one follow-up question about Apple. What did your application process look like to Apple? Like, did you have to like solve tests for them, like some companies require?
Yeah. So for my position, I just applied online through the system, and it's basic. Like you fill in everything, you just submit resume and cover letter, and then whether you get an interview call or not, that's it. So that was very, very easy process.
I see. And just one more question about application process to McKinsey. So when you applied, you had like, I think as far as I know, there are stages that you have to go through.
Yeah.
Can we talk a bit more about that? Like, did it require a lot of time?
So I applied within McKinsey. There are different also solutions, right? Like departments or companies. So I applied to the company, which is called Finalta. It is it was acquired by McKinsey like 10 years ago, and they have their own methodologies in terms of like how they do benchmarking in retail banking, insurance, and telecom. So that's their specialization. So it was really interesting for me to apply for that sector because I've been living in Singapore, which is like a financial hub. And most of my local friends there, they work in the finance sector. So I thought like one of the ways to enter finance sector would be actually consulting in finance or like consulting banks. So that could be interesting. So that's why I applied. And like the process was that first you had to fill in the in the system, in the McKinsey system, you have to fill in the application. Then I had an invitation for test. So it was 2 tests at the same time. So first test was quantitative. So previously they had PST. Now I think they replaced it with something else. So it was a quantitative test with graphs and all those like analytical questions. That was 1 hour. And then I had another 45 minutes test, which was like a written case. So they give you a situation in which you have to make some kind of business decision, and they give you like interviews, for example, with the employees who say, oh, this decision should be made because these factors, and then they give you some information about the like the situation and the context, and then you have to write a memo in which you explain like whether this business decision has to be made or not, and then you like argue why those decisions have to be made or not. So that's the second test. So that was like screening, then the 2 tests. Then I had 3 interviews. So first interview was with manager. It was half fit, half business case. So fit is like they ask you about situations like, tell me about the situation when you managed well a conflict. Tell me about the situation when you had this and that. And then they ask you probing questions and grill you on that case. And then the other part was business case. I don't remember what was it. And second interview was with the 2 managers. So they give you some data, and then you produce certain graphs and you make a presentation basically. So it's like a more BCG style. So you make a presentation out of those numbers, and then you explain why you made those and like why you're using these measurements, and like answer the questions that they ask you. That was with 2 managers. And the last one was with 2 directors, like partners. And you like basically there they ask you mostly about your aspirations and what you want to do in the company, and like what are your aims and goals, and what like how do you see yourself in this company, why do you think you're fit. They may also ask you tricky questions like looking at your resume. For example, they were like, everyone is trying to get in Singapore, why are you living in Singapore? Yeah, Apple is a great company, why are you leaving Apple? And I'm like, the grass is greener always when we're not there, right? So yeah, so you have to explain certain like life decisions that you made. And they may also ask questions like about your hobbies. So for example, for me, they were like, okay, we see 3 hobbies from your resume: debates, organizing events, and running. Like why these 3, and how did they like define you as a person? So I had like to explain those as well. So that's important part of the interactions. And after that, you hear from them like the final decision. And then, yeah, that's how the process was.
Yeah, it seems like a long process, and thank you for explaining that in such detail. Um, yeah, so we're done with the main segment of our interview, and before Q&A, we have one little segment, which is me asking you blitz questions. You can answer them shortly, but if you want to explain them like in detail, you can also do that. So the first question is top 3 courses in the undergraduate that you liked and remembered the most.
Okay, UN for sure. Oh, Chacha's courses. Okay, UN, European integration, also Prof. Chacha, and politics of Eurasia. I think that's Dr. Sullivan deserves his own spot.
2 qualities that each PSIR student should have.
2 qualities as each. Curiosity and open-mindedness.
Yeah, good ones. Your life motto.
I think my life motto. Okay, that's hard. Hard work doesn't always pay off, but no work never does. Maybe something like that.
Nice. That's a nice one. If not political science, what would it be? I think you mentioned about physics and math in the beginning.
No, actually, I think I would go for history. So I did minor in history. And that was also like one of the latest decisions I made. And it was influenced by Professor Zbigniew Wojnowski. I don't know if you guys know him, but he was one of the best like history professors in NU. I took history of Kazakhstan with him, and then he was also one of the advisors of the debate club. And I did independent research with him. So he was great. And actually, when I was doing the independent research, I realized that I've taken enough history courses so I could minor in history. So I decided to minor in it. And Prof. Daniel Biben and Beatrice Pinati, they were really great as well.
Yeah, I do agree. I do share your passion for history. I think all history professors are wonderful, like my subjective opinion.
And you know what? The worst part is that history is such an underestimated major in NU. Like, I
Yes.
think the department was doing, I don't know how it is now, but like when I was there, the department was blooming. They were doing so much interesting stuff. And the entire way they like open your eyes when you study the history and they make the subject so interesting. I was like, this is great. And if not political science, I would definitely go for history. If I actually like knew that before, that history was such a great thing, I would probably do a double major. So I think it's very underestimated. And it's one of the comments I got from one of the debaters who actually came from the UK, and he was studying at Oxford. We invited him as a trainer for the academy, and he was doing major in history. So with him, we had this conversation, and he was like, "Yeah, like I studied history, and I decided to major in my second year because like, and he's one of the best debaters and speakers in the world." And I was like, "Oh my god, I had to know this before."
Yeah. I think history department was a bit dormant in the beginning of my like college years, but it's coming back to life now, I think. Next question, what would you tell yourself in your first year at NU if you had the opportunity to? Would you do something differently?
Hmm. Yeah, I don't like thinking that I did something wrong, but yeah, I think I would definitely try to do more internships. Maybe at the expense of like spending less time for debates, but I don't know.
Oh, that's a juicy one.
Yeah. Like Nomad Club coming after me. It's okay. They can't. Uh, what else? Yeah, it's a very tough question. I would probably take more quantitative courses if possible, like econ courses. But I really like almost all the courses that I took. I think 90% I really like. So yeah, I'm not sure about this one. Okay.
Okay,
Did more internships, took more econ courses.
nice. Top three advices you would give to undergraduate students right now?
Top three. Yeah, first is like sleep well and eat well. Your body will not be this young and resilient as you think. Uh, yeah, try to relax and like have fun in your undergrad because it's the times of your life. It's one of the best times for sure. Um, that's the first one. Second one is like don't stress out because I believe that things always work as they should. Like be confident in your choices that you make, and even if you made mistakes, those still your choice. Yeah, be responsible for your choices. It's very important. And final one is I think that NU students should always dream big, especially the PSIR ones, because is like graduates from top universities working in big companies such as an Apple, and like being part of like really high class people or whatever. I don't know, like being part of the place where a lot of smart people gather. I could see that we as students, we are very competitive and we are quite professional, and the knowledge we gain at NU is really really meaningful and valuable, and it puts us on the map because wherever I went, wherever my classmates or like batchmates from NU went, they always end up being one of the brightest students. They always end up being one of the smartest ones. And it's really cool to see that our country and our like university can produce such professionals and such bright young minds. So yeah, know that and be confident that you are capable of doing great things. So try to dream big.
Yeah, these are very nice advices. And I have the last question before proceeding to our Q&A. NU or NUS?
Oh no, I can't do that.
It's okay if you don't answer, but
Okay, 51 to 49, I think NU.
oh, that's nice. That's nice. That's a smart answer. Okay. So thank you, Inkar, so much with spending an hour with us and talking about your application experiences, your work experiences. They really do matter, and it's really nice for us to be able to talk to you. If anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself right now and ask them, or write them in the chat. I can read them out loud.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Inkar. It's super cool to see your cute face and hear your voice, especially after a million years.
I know.
My question is, how do you decide when it's time to move on to a new job?
That's a very good question. I think few things. One is learning curve. So you should I think job should be always the place you learn something. Even if it's not every day, it has to be somewhere where you learn new skills, new perspectives, new opportunities. And when those things exhaust themselves, that's one factor to consider to move on. Second is the joy, getting up in the morning and going to work without thinking that, oh, shit, I'm doing this again. I have to go to work. I mean, of course, every day will not be as bright as you want it to be. It's just in movies when people wake up every day and they're so enthusiastic about their jobs. There will be days when you hate your job, you hate your colleagues or your bosses. That's it's fine. It's humane. And it's actually okay. But I think it's very important to not hate your job regularly and or to not have bad feelings about it. So for me, the exhausting part was that I was working from home for a year. And at some point I was I stopped caring about waking up early, sitting at my desk, being all dressed up and ready for my calls and everything. So that was another factor. So work should bring you joy, even if it's not regularly, even if you have really bad week, at the end of it, you should feel some joy from the place that you are part of. And for me, third factor was making impact. I think it's one of the really important factors for people who graduate from, for example, public policy majors, because when you are in class with so many bright minds and you really know that you can make impact and you've been doing that before, and you don't get that anymore because you're part of really big corporation where you are one of the small details, one small I don't know, small thing that could be replaced easily by someone else, and you are not feeling the impact of your work. You don't know where your reports are going, how they're going to be used, how much consumers are going to be impacted by them. For example, in my case, I think that's the other part, the third part. So learning, getting joy, and making impact.
Thank you for that very structured debater answer. And good luck with your new job.
Thank you, Dila. I hope you're doing great.
Thank you.
So, if anyone wants to ask your question, you can do that now. unless if no one has any questions, then I would like to thank our guest, our incredible guest, Inkar, for such a nice conversation, for sharing so many tips. I would also like to thank our audience. I know that right now it's the end of the semester and everyone's preparing for their finals, but thanks for attending. We also recorded this our PSIR talk. You can check out our different interviews also on our channel. So we've had Daulet, Anastasia. We also had a discussion about political discussion with Iskander. So yeah, thank you everyone, guys, for coming, and stay tuned for more. Thanks, Inkar.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.